what you see is peace, you see harmony, you see tranquility, and it's the most peaceful, quiet, gentle thing that you ever get to experience. You can go out into wild places, to places where these horses have never had interactions with people before, but when you spend a lot of time being still and quiet and observing and taking notes, it's a bit like you're a magnet for young horses. They want to come over and interact with you, so you have this curiosity. And what I see with wild horses and free-living horses is just expressivity. Like there's so much communication, there's so much information there. Because that's what it's all about, is the social connections, being able to understand what's going on in the wider context of where they are. And I think in domestication, horses are so sensitive to deal with the sort of loudness of us as a vocal species, of the things we do, the environments we put them in. To be able to cope with that, they need to sort of put up some sort of barriers or shut down to a certain degree and maybe show you a bit less communication. But that's different with every horse as well. So sometimes it's realising the value of observation wherever that is. So before I work with any horse or before I work with any groups of horses, there's this period of time of just not being amongst them, just standing back and seeing how they interact with each other and how they behave in their space. Just building up a picture, gathering this information before I start to, then put myself in there.
And you're going very much to the forefront when working with the wild horses and attempting to touch their hooves and getting them to lift their legs. That's something that our domesticated horses are very used to, and it's part of their regime from quite a young age. How do you communicate to a wild horse that it's safe and that this is something that you need to do to help them?
Well, I guess you can't communicate that it's something you need to do to help. It's got to come from a place of trust. And I'm sure Emily will talk more about trust and define that really clearly for you. But if you think about horses as a species, they're very much talked about as a flight animal, which certainly is part of that. They've got long legs, they can run very fast, they've got incredible senses, they can pick up rustling grass and mountain lions getting closer, this sort of thing. And they're very reactive to that. But it's not at the heart of who they are. They're a social creature. That's far more what's shaped their behaviour than their flight instinct. But that said, for a flight animal who is predated upon, having your legs grabbed and trapped is not a good thing. So even if you haven't experienced that, there's a on a species level, you're going to react in a way that's very frightening. So if I go in there with a horse that hasn't been handled or had legs touched in any way, it's like the last thing I would even think about doing. And what comes before that is this building of a trusting relationship, me having value to them, in a way that it builds the trust, but it also allows for this expression between us. And then if we do start interacting, so quite often if you can find a scratchy spot, that's a wonderful experience for a horse, because we're quite good at scratching them. And then if they're touching you and you're touching them, you can work your way towards touching the legs. But this is why I talk about an ultimate goal. It's like, this is where we want to go, trimming the feet, which is the biggest deal probably you could ever ask of a horse. But how we get there is different with every individual, but it's all about building up trust and, me being reliable and not doing things that are going to frighten them.
And how do these conic ponies compare to some of the wild horses that you've met around the world?
This particular group are extremely friendly. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of social interactions going on. They're very expressive and very curious. They're also very vocal. You don't usually hear horses making quite as much noise as these guys do. But I think that's the thing that I love watching. There's so many, there's always something going on. So yeah, it's interesting. The comparison, as you go around the world and you see these different groups of free-living equids and wild equids, everywhere's different. There's a sort of different cultural behaviour depending on the environment, how they've grown up. But you then start to sort of pick out these threads of commonality and these behaviours that you can start to recognise. And you certainly see that here, but expressed in different ways.
And they're obviously used to the planes because we're on a
amazing,
flight
isn't
path
it?
above us, aren't we?
I know. And some of them come quite low, but yeah, they're used to that. It's part of their world.
Bonnie, can you talk us through a memory that stands out in your mind working with wild horses that you can share with us?
Absolutely. The one that sticks in my mind that I keep going back to is with a young, free living, not a wild horse, but completely unhandled, hadn't had interactions with people, which basically was one of those crossroad moments that you experience in your life sometimes. And it was an absolute epiphany for me.
Arrived at Wickham Fen, the UK's first nature reserve and home to more than 100 wild conic ponies.
Animals have these rich emotional lives. We can start to talk about, they have friendships.
Such an amazing experience being out with the herd, relaxing, resting, grazing together in their family groups.
We can never know the inner life of another, but we can start to piece together a picture and an understanding. And it's that idea of beginner's mind, that curiosity, you know, the curious equestrians. It's like, practice that.
I've been through a bit of a meditation, just listening to my breathing, watching the horses, how they react to us.
So to have much more compassion and empathy within the horse world, giving the horses more choices, but in a way that doesn't necessarily have to align with our needs, but also listening to things they want to do and also recognizing when they want us to be a part of that one.
But is it usual that they'd be grazing so close together?
Yeah, out here it is, yeah. And it's wonderful. This is healthier for the land. It's good for both of them in terms of the horses and the cows. But there's a lot of stallions, and you get to watch. People don't get a chance to really acknowledge stallions and the richness of the lives they lead.
Today we're going to head out into the herd to learn more about trust, communication and choice with some of the world's leading experts. Let's go.